Next, we have here, company Peloton, if you're not familiar, known for their treadmills, premium treadmills at that. So they're not cheap. Anyway, there was an issue that was brought about when a child was caught in the treadmill and died. So, who would have thought that, having a treadmill could kill someone? And according to the article here at wired.com, they mentioned that the company had to recall more than 125,000 treadmills. So that's a lot of treadmills they have sold over this past period. So they have to pause selling the said equipment since the machines or the treadmill were linked to several injuries as well as a death of a child here, which is not a good sign if you're trying to sell an equipment that's supposed to be, place somewhere inside your home, whether in a living room or in an exercise room and so forth. But people will be, you know going on and about. So especially the child or even an animal could interact with it, which is not good if you're Peloton here. Anyway, so the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, or CPSC, announced that they made a separate recall for the Peloton Tread and Tread Plus treadmills. So the high-end Tread Plus, then a lower tier Tread that they're calling it, they urged them to stop using it because of, as mentioned, that there were concerns regarding it could cause risk of injury and worse death. Now, obviously, if you're Peloton here, they were recalling it not because they were asked to, they voluntarily did this, but it took them 3 weeks after the CPSC warned about the consumers about the risk of those treadmills here, which is a little bit too late, which is kind of surprising if you think about it. And I'm sure if you were Peloton when you were developing it, when you saw, you tested it, I'm sure you knew that a treadmill of that size, of its usage, people, not just people, adults and young adults or kids at that, could interact with your treadmill and could have significant risk involved here. Now, how risky it is, we'll show you in a bit here. Where was it? So as mentioned, there were potential risks and at worst death here. And what's interesting here, according to the CEO or chief executive of Peloton, John Foley, said apologized. What was it? Yeah, so he mentions that he apologized for today's earlier insistence that the company would not recall the treadmill, which is kind of a bit too late in terms of the reaction here and doing nothing, waiting for an accident to happen before doing something about it. Now, obviously, this is a PR nightmare if you're a company, especially, you're supposed to sell this uber premium product at a high exorbitant price and expecting it to work and obviously not, harm or injure individuals here. There you go. So as I mentioned, so what can Peloton do here? Now, obviously, Peloton has been a big success in this pandemic period. Obviously, people were stuck at home, so trying to find ways to keep themselves busy or distracted. Obviously, exercising is one of the ways to do that. Now, obviously, you can go to a gym and exercise with other people. Obviously, being in close contact, staying at home is a big issue here. So obviously, sales have surged from last year. And what's interesting, despite having to have long wait times, obviously for the high demand, low supply, you do the math. So obviously this is tremendous if you're Peloton here. And what's interesting, there were more than 1.7 million members who have bought the equipment, a very expensive equipment. And on top of that, they also charge you for a monthly fee for the exercise or video classes. So either charge you $40 for that access or $12 per month mobile access fitness class. So, it's for the Uber rich who can afford it. I was thinking actually before buying a treadmill, but obviously price is a hindrance, but also the space that it takes up in your living room here. So we decided instead to buy a treadmill, sorry, a stationary bike here now. Obviously, one of the key features or the reasons why their particular treadmill was a hazardous for adults or even kids is, let's see here. It's their technology that they uses a slat belt technology, which leaves a gap between the moving belt and a floor below it. So let's see here. So you can see here, so it's a typical treadmill, but what you notice here, there's a remarkable gap. Normally if you see a treadmill, there's literally no gap because you placed it on the floor so that no one can be caught underneath it. But in this case, it's a feature that they provided. So they put a stand underneath the tread, so it would be smooth when it's moving around the belt itself. But obviously, I don't know if they did not test it carefully. They did not do some quality control to ensure that the treadmill would be safe. And obviously, when they investigated here the concerns of the product here, and one of the key things to take note here, if you're planning to buy this knowing that it's a hazard, in terms of the price tag here, it's worth to note that it's worth in the north of $4,000. So that's roughly around a little over 200,000 pesos local money here. And that's for their high-end premium product. Now, a lower tier, which is also expensive, half the price of that, less than $2,500 to $495. So that's roughly a little over 100,000 pesos local currency. So you have the Peloton Tread and Tread Plus. So they're not they're not cheap. That's for one thing. So is it worth it to buy an expensive product when it can be considered a hazardous equipment of sorts? Now, what's interesting here, the company is willing to offer refunds for any of those treadmills that you've bought, whether it's the Tread or the Tread Plus, upon request. Now, that could have been maybe after the fact. They should have, you know, tested it fully, ensure that it is a safe product to use in your household. Anyway, apart from that, they were also offering treadmills to be moved in your household. So if it's in a populated area where heavy traffic people comes and goes, so you could move it. But I think they should have offered it in the first place, right? From the time that the customer buys it, they should have institute this service that I think it's a better place for your treadmill to be moved in a more isolated area, so that it can be away from children and away from harm or accidents, so to speak here. So obviously this has caused significant ramification in terms of the company's image here. And obviously, if you're the company here, what can you do here? Now, it was mentioned in the article that modifications can be done, but you have to recall your treadmills, which is kind of costly, which is, this is what happens if you rush out. I won't say rush out, but you release a product that's not 100% safe, right? But one of the mentions here that they could explore a software fix, meaning if someone were to get caught underneath that the treadmill will automatically stop, which I think it's a simple update. But if it needs a physical redesign, as mentioned here, obviously it's going to be a more daunting task for the company. But either way, for the price that you're paying, you want to make sure that it's well worth it. Otherwise, you could always look for a different alternative in the end here.